Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Andrea Heuston of Artitudes Design. Andrea, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Gresh.
Definitely super excited to have you on as well. And before we jumped in, I wanted to read a little bit more about Andrea so you can hear about all the awesome things that she's doing. And Andrea is the founder and CEO of Artitudes Design and has been in the tech industry for over 30 years. Her company, Artitudes Design, is a full service creative services and experiential design firm that specializes in connecting messages to audience in a visually impactful way. Andrea is a respected business leader and an entrepreneur who is sought after as a board member and keynote speaker. She passionately contributes to several nonprofit organizations and has been a prolific voice on women's and leadership topics in the workforce. In 2020, she started her own podcast, The Lead Like a Woman Show, focusing on empowering women leaders to empower others through topical discussions and interviews with female leaders. And she is passionate about helping to close the gender gap for women in business, and watch out for her new book, Stronger on the Other Side. Andrea, it's great to have you on the show. All the awesome work you're doing. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am ready. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's do it then. So to kind of kick everything off, I wanted to rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on what I call your CEO story. We'll let you get started with all the awesome work you're doing.
All right, my CEO story. So I was a reluctant CEO, a reluctant entrepreneur. I had been working at an engineering firm for a number of years. I started, honestly, when I was 17 years old. By the time I was 24, I was running the creative services department, and I had 6 people working in that team. One day, my manager called me and said, I need you to lay off your entire team. We've been purchased by a French company, and they have a creative department that we'll be utilizing. So I was 24, never done anything like this. It was shocking because some of the people on that team were over twice my age and had a lot of experience. So I laid them all off. And the next day I came in and they laid me off, and I never saw it coming. So just too young, too inexperienced. 2 days later, my phone rang, and this was back with real phone lines. There were no such thing as cell phones back then. My phone rang, and the company said, hey, we made a mistake. We need you to come back and bring one of your team members so we can roll out the brand change for the parent company. And I literally said, I'll call you back, hung up the phone, drove myself to the state capitol in Washington, and got a business license. The next day I called them back and I said, yep, I'll come back and I will bring Sandy and you will pay us through my new company. And that's how we started.
Awesome. Good for you. I definitely appreciate that. And I feel like as somebody who's been laid off, even if you see it coming, it still hurts just as hard. And I love that you took that moment. It sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to empower yourself and create that business and give yourself that opportunity to be able to grow and scale from there.
Yep. And I borrowed $5,000 from my grandmother at the time so I could buy myself a Mac computer and the full setup. Back then, they were super expensive, and some business cards. So from there, the rest is history.
There you go. The seed was planted and he took off from there. So I wanted to hear a little bit more on what you took off to and how you work with your clients and how you serve them.
So, a lot of the people in that layoff went to this little tiny software company in Redmond called Microsoft. It was tiny.
Yeah,
And
I think I've heard of
in
it.
that, yeah, you think so? Maybe. In that process, my phone started ringing because people said, hey, we know you have a business now. We need help with this. We need help with this. So my very first project for Microsoft was Flight Simulator 95, where I came in and did all the documentation and the layout of the product book and some of the other stuff that went with it. And we just grew from there. So it took me about 10 years as a sole proprietor, and I was hiring contractors. So I was a contractor hiring contractors. And I had one particular freelancer who named me as his employer, despite the fact that it was 1099 and I couldn't be an employer. I was a sole proprietor. Well, the IRS came after me because the burden of proof was on me. And he was wanted for child support in 2 states. So they tried to garnish his wages, but he didn't have any wages because he was a 1099 employee. So I ended up paying between fees and fines over $40,000 because it was at the time where the IRS was cracking down on some of the bigger companies and saying, if these people are not employees, you have to prove it. And I had given software and computers to all my 1099s. And so I was labeled as an employer, even though I wasn't, and had to pay fees and fines. And so I then incorporated on the advice of a very good lawyer and started hiring employees. And we doubled the first year, we tripled the next year. It was super fast moving. And then we really honed the tip of our spear to be a creative services firm, focusing on anything on the screen behind a speaker, be it one on one or one on 50,000. So it's been a ride, but we work with Fortune 500 companies, Microsoft, Expedia, Tableau, Cisco, TikTok, and also some mid-market fund companies like St. Michelle Wine Estates is one of my favorites.
Nice. Well, I definitely appreciate you, for sharing that. And I think so many times we don't hear about all the parts of running a business. We hear about the really high highs, but we don't hear about the not so high highs
Yeah.
or that we kind of go through. But I think hearing that kind of reminds us of how important it is to still kind of keep going, and that you've been able to still, achieve that success. And we all kind of have those bumps in the roads along that process.
Yeah, we really do. And we have to realize they're not forever. So I
Yeah.
have this theory, I call it failing forward. I'm going to
Mhm.
fail, but I'm going to fail forward. So instead of falling down the stairs, my goal is to fall up the stairs. So I just
Mm.
learned something and I move on. And it makes me stronger, better, more creative, and really better at running a business and connecting with people.
Yeah, and I think so many times we don't realize that by failing forward, we're using somewhat the time and same energy we would have if we were wallowing in the mistake that we made, and we don't realize that that time is not going to change, but we can change our reaction, we can change how we look at those things. So I love that.
Exactly. And that is the whole theme of my book is I can't change what happens to me. I can only really control how I react and how I move forward from there. And it's really about not being in a victim mentality because I will tell you, my very first employee stole from me. My
Mm,
second business operations manager or office manager threw a chair at a freelancer and I was hit with a lawsuit. I mean, there's
wow.
so many lessons I have learned on how to run a business by learning how not to run a business, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. But you get to learn those lessons. And I love, that you put that and share that, in the book. And that's the theme of the book, because I think so many times we don't realize that a lot of people reach success not by doing it all themselves and going at it alone, but by learning from others. So I appreciate you so much in putting that in your book and being able to kind of impart those lessons onto us.
Thanks, Crash.
Awesome. 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 And I wanted to hear a little bit more about your show as well, too, your podcast. Could you take us through a little bit more of what we can listen to there?
Of course, I love my podcast. So this was frankly, a COVID project. I had been wanting to run a podcast or at least start one for about 3 years. And I went away to this leadership academy last March. I'm a member of EO Entrepreneurs Organization. And so I was with the leadership academy in Hawaii the week before the world shut down. And I got together with this group of really supportive women and we were all talking about things we wanted to do and be. And I said, well, I've been wanting to run a podcast, but it's overwhelming because I don't want to do the editing. I don't want to do all that crap. I just want to interview, really. And I was referred to a company that runs podcasts. And within 2 weeks, I had hired them. And within 5 weeks, I had my first 4 episodes up.
Mm.
So I have the honor and the privilege of interviewing these incredible women somewhere in their careers, doesn't matter where, but they are focused on empowering other people. And so we're learning from each other in such a way that makes the conversation completely relevant to everybody, but also brings strength. So I love these women that I interview because a lot of them have been through crap. A lot of them, in fact, most women, as a general rule, have been through crap if they're in a career and if they're in business in particular, whether they run a business, own a business, or if they're part of a big machine. And so it's really fascinating to learn from their lessons. And I end every podcast with the same question. You'll have to listen to hear what it is, but we really get to the core of what somebody's incredible inner power is. It's so
Mm.
fun. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you for sharing, so much of that gift and that ability to interview and hear those stories, because I'm a big believer in a lot of times when we're going through frustrating moments, we feel like we're by ourselves. We feel that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But by hearing those stories and knowing that, I feel like, as you said so well, that empowers, everybody to be able to kind of lean into that and continue to keep going.
I think so too. It's been a really big gift for me to speak to all these women. I learn something every time I talk to someone new.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned the word inner power. So I was going to ask you for what I call your secret sauce. And this could be for you
Oh.
personally or your business or a combination of both. But what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique and is maybe your inner power?
So, my inner power, my secret sauce is really optimism. And I know that sounds a little bit Miss Mary Sunshine, but I can always see the silver lining in the cloud. And, it's because I've been through so much crap in my own life. And my book really highlights some of my stories. But just so you know, I was in a coma for 17
Mm,
days. I almost didn't make it through. In fact, my husband was told to say goodbye 3 times. The house that is behind me on the screen burned down,
mm.
and I was there with my kids and had to get them out of a burning house. And so there's other stories in there too, but it really is a story of resilience. And what I have learned through the years is that because I have that ability to see the positive side and I've been honing that muscle a lot, I am able to help other people see the positive in things too. And so it really is a secret sauce.
Yeah, I love that you shared that, and I love that word that you use because I was gonna ask you. It sounds like a muscle, and I love that you said honing that muscle because I think so many times when we think optimism, we don't think it's something that can be cultivated, that can be crafted. But it sounds like because of those experiences, and you've been able to kind of come off on the other side and been stronger on the other side, for lack of
Yeah.
a better phrase, it allows you that opportunity to kind of see that optimism and everything.
Well, I agree because optimism, frankly, is a choice. We can choose our reaction. And sometimes I get like everybody else, where I get the poor me's and something has happened and I'm down about it. And then I realize by doing some of my practices to come through that is really about seeing the positive. So I have a practice of gratitude every day. So I write 4 to 6 gratitudes every day, and I end every day with a journal. And a girlfriend for my birthday gave me a journal that is 5 lines per day. And so all I have to do is come up with 5 lines. And I always make sure there's something positive in there because then I'm starting the day and I'm ending the day on a positive note. And those bookends are super important for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine that it creates that kind of momentum for the next day or even to start out that day to be able to kind of book in that way. So, would you consider that to be what I would like to call your CEO hack, which can be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but something that makes you more effective and efficient? Is that bookend practice that allows you to do that?
Absolutely. So I do something called the 10-10-10 in the morning. So I do 10 minutes of positive reading. And I just look online. There's goodnews.com is one of my favorites, but I try to find something positive to read every day for 10 minutes. I do 10 minutes of journaling. And what that means is free form. I can write anything I want. I can look at something and start from there. And then I do my journal, or not my journaling, sorry, but my gratitudes for 10
Mhm.
minutes. And what it does is it gives me this mind frame of both positivity but abundance. So I had a business coach say to me one time, come at everything from a position of abundance and you will always have enough.
Mm.
So on my computer screen, on my mirror, I have a little sticky note that says abundance. And it reminds me that sometimes when I feel like I'm in need, that I realize I have plenty. I have enough to keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly powerful to know that you have everything that you need. And I don't know if you would feel the same way, but I almost feel like if you can flood yourself with the positivity, with that abundance, with that optimism, it can kind of, you don't have enough space to have the negativity that sometimes can kind of seep
Exactly.
in. So I love that practice.
Exactly. And I don't want to say that negativity is a bad thing because what negativity can do is it can lead us to a positive place. It's just not
Mm.
wallowing in it. And I get down just like everybody else, but I always get up again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just you don't stay down for as long as you could, and that's the kind of the power and the and the opportunity as well too. So,
Exactly.
I want to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. So this
Oh.
could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
That's funny because there's a lot of things I would tell my youngest business self. But that's the one I would focus on really for me is I would tell myself to stop worrying so much about what other people think, especially in business. Because as a woman who was born in the 70s, I'm a little old, but as a woman who was born in the 70s, I really, really was born into a world of men. And the business world was men as well. So I have never felt like I was enough. So, in order to say to myself, maybe 30 years ago when I was first starting out, I would say something like, You need to stop worrying as much about what other people think and listen to your inner voice because it
Mhm.
will not steer you wrong.
Yeah, and that's extremely powerful because I think so many times when you have those feelings of not being enough, I don't want to say if you kind of turn that into what you can do and kind of measure yourself by yourself, not externally focused, it
Yes.
allows you to get, I think, peace in knowing that I'm going to continue to do my best. I'm going to continue to take the next step forward rather than being externally focused.
Yeah, and it works with my clients too, because a lot of our clients are getting up to speak on stage, be it one on one or one on 50,000, and everybody has nerves. I don't care how many times you've been in front of people on a stage, you still have nerves. And so, what I like to say is just be yourself. And it doesn't matter what other people think as long as you nail it for yourself. And it
Yeah.
really helps people be more at ease.
Absolutely. Yeah. I say so many times that if you run your own race, you can never lose. And I think
Exactly.
yeah, we get so caught up in running somebody else's race or what does so and so think or what is so and so doing that we lose ourselves, we lose
Yeah.
our appreciation ourselves, and we lose that individuality that makes us special.
We do. And that's just sad.
Hmm.
So, I remember in junior high and high school, every kid wanted to be like the other. We wanted to dress the same. We wanted to have the same hair. We wanted to do the same things. But what that doesn't teach you is adults, you really want to come away from the pack. You really, really want to focus on running your own race because then you can't lose because you're only competing against yourself. And it's something that we're not good at teaching kids. We really aren't in our society. It's something that we're pretty bad at. So, really, really, when we're looking at kids and giving them encouragement and giving our younger selves encouragement, it's really about being okay with running your own race and being okay with not measuring up to some bar that isn't really there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we create that culture or that environment that allows, people to be themselves and to lean into that, that's when really phenomenal things start to happen because you get the innovations, you get the appreciation of self, the self-love, and it just makes the world an overall better place. And of course, every aspect of that. Well, Andrew, I truly appreciate that. And now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So, Andrew, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question, Gresh. So, really, for me, being a CEO means help steering the ship. I believe that all boats rise with the incoming tide, and that means everybody. So, my job as a CEO is to lead from behind. I love the concept of servant leadership. And really, I try very hard to serve my people so they can be the best, do the best, and give the best that they absolutely can. So, I'm a cheerleader. I'm a cheerleader and I'm a strategist, but I'm not somebody who's bossy and I'm not a micromanager. So, really, my goal is to lead from behind and make sure that all boats are rising.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love, that kind of phrase as well, too, because I think so many times we get locked into our own silos and we don't see the forest for the trees, so to speak. We don't see that by
Yes.
helping somebody's boat rise, it's going to help the next person, then the next person. And when we
Yeah.
kind of see that, especially from a teammate standpoint and people that are within the organization, it allows everybody to shine, everybody to feel empowered, and everybody to grow ultimately.
It really, really does. And I think it's super valuable for people because you're leading a team atmosphere then. You're not telling people what to do. I believe that the worst managers and bosses in the world are the ones that tell people what to do and force their will on people. I would much rather know what helps people be successful and let them rise to that place rather than telling them they need to follow a certain set of guidelines to get somewhere. Tell me what you need and we'll get there together.
Yeah, and I think too that that creates a certain environment or a culture, as we kind of talked about as well too, where people's gifts, their abilities, their perspectives start to shine through, and you get to see some of those innovations and those opportunities. If you're just doing everything I tell you to do or a boss tells you to do, then you only get that person's perspective. You don't really get that iron sharpening iron, so to speak.
Right. And everybody has their own specific gifts. I don't need to push my stuff on somebody else. Rather, they need to shine in order to be successful, both in their life, but also in the company.
Mhm.
It's a way to get positive work out of people, but it's also a way for people to love and enjoy what they're doing and where they are.
Yes, absolutely. Creating a win-win-win opportunity is definitely the way to go. So, Andrea, truly appreciate that definition, and I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is just pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best they can get a hold of you, get a copy of the book, subscribe to the podcast, and find out about all the awesome things that you're working on.
Awesome. Thanks, Crash. I'm so excited to be here today. So you can follow me at leadlikeawoman.biz, and Lead Like a Woman is on all the channels. We're on Google Play, we're on Stitcher and TuneIn and Apple and Amazon. So anywhere at all that you can find good podcasts, that's where we are. The other thing is Stronger on the Other Side. It's my new book, and it just got published 2.5 weeks ago on my 50th birthday. So I'm super excited about it and what's coming next. But you can find Stronger on the Other Side, The Power to Choose on Amazon.com. Or you can go to my website at AndreaHeuston.com, and it's Andrea, Heuston. Finally, my business is Artitudes Design, and our website is artitudes.com. So that's ARTITUDES. Thanks, Crash. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm really happy to be interviewed on your show. I've been really looking forward to this.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you for taking some time out. We will have the links and information in the show notes. Happy belated 50th birthday as well, too. I love that you've been able to kind of publish that book and give out all this awesomeness, around your birthday. So that's something that's very exciting. And again, such a great reminder of the work that you do and the permission that we have to kind of be ourselves and lean into that. So thank you so much for all you stand for. And of course, the time you took today.
Of course, it was a pleasure.